Hi, this is John from Wayland Speed. We've done some flex fuel cars recently. We wanted to make a video to show what all is involved from the hardware side of it, the software side of it, and like the actual tuning process. So we can start off with the hardware here. Jason, you can explain this.
All right, so for stock ECU stuff, usually you need a voltage input instead of a frequency, which is what the ethanol sensors generally put out. So here's one module that actually converts the ethanol sensor's frequency output into a voltage output that the ECU can read. The added benefit of these is they also send the ethanol content to your phone over Bluetooth, so you can get an app that you can actually read your ethanol content on your phone. So it's nice to know where you're at all the time. But your ECU will also use that to make compensations to the fueling, ignition timing, boost, and everything on the fly for any ethanol blend. All right, so this is actually a Haltech system here. It's a full standalone, and we're running this on an Evo 9 that we're tuning with flex fuel right now. The standalone systems generally don't need the converter module, like I just explained. That's for the stock ECU kind of stuff only. This actually takes the frequency input from an ethanol sensor and reads it directly, and you're able to calibrate the frequency to ethanol content here, but it's just a set value that's specified by GM or Continental, the sensor manufacturer. With what's nice about these is that there's a sensor diagnostics where it will actually, if the sensor has any kind of failure or detects water in the system or anything like that, it'll actually alert the ECU that there's a problem, and it will lock to a certain ethanol content, and then it'll also throw a check engine light to let you know that something's wrong. So generally, we set the diagnostic failure mode to a higher ethanol content, so that if anything, the car runs a little bit richer, and it'll pull timing out and boost out just until you figure out what the problem is and fix it. On the stock ECU stuff, here's for Subaru with the Carberry ROM. It does the same thing, but instead of using the frequency, it uses a voltage. The modules actually will drop voltage to 0 volts if there's a sensor failure, and that will alert the ECU that there was a problem, that you can actually set the boundaries for the sensor here to, once it's outside those boundaries, for a delay time, which is 3 seconds here. It will alert that there's a problem. The ECU will lock to a specific ethanol content. Here I've got it set to 15%, or that's actually a 15% fuel compensation that it locks to, which means it's going to add 15% fuel over pump gas. With these also, you have a scaling value. So the module outputs a voltage. You can tell based on the voltage input here, you can tell the ECU what the ethanol content is, and these have 5 different cells that you can do. Generally it's a pretty linear output, but you can fine tune it to make it perfect if it needs to be. All right, so we're going to go over some of the actual compensations that the ethanol sensor flex fuel system makes. This is the Haltech map again here. What we have with the Haltech is a fuel composition correction percentage. This table right here is actually a maximum fuel compensation based on RPM and engine load and manifold pressure. Basically, you want to set this to the maximum amount of fuel compensation that you will need. Typically, most of the blends we see are up to 80%, 85%. So we would set this maybe just above that or at what we would need for extra fuel for that ethanol content. So right now we have this just set to 50. We haven't finished tuning this car, so we may end up changing this some. You can add extra fuel in certain areas based on if you want more fuel up top or down low with ethanol content increasing. This table here works in combination with the fuel composition scalar table, and this actually is graduated by ethanol content as an input, and then output is a percentage of this table that it uses. So if you have 50% here, say at 40% ethanol, you have a 50% value. That's going to use 50% of this table, which would be, since these are 50, it'd be 25%. So it would add 25% fuel to your base fueling to compensate for the extra ethanol content. That takes care of the fuel. You can adjust that to make sure that at every blend you're able to get the correct fuel trims and AFRs and boost and everything for fueling is correct. With the Haltech, you also have the ignition correction. It's kind of the same thing here. You have a ignition adder or subtractor, and based on manifold pressure and RPM, you can add a certain amount of timing. This is the max amount that it will ever add. And again, you have the scalar table, and it will be the percentage of this table based on ethanol content. So again, if you had, say you had 50% here, at 40% ethanol or so, you would end up taking half of these values would be added on top of your base ignition timing. So that allows you to get the extra benefits of the ethanol by adding timing, getting more power out of it. And generally ethanol, it just needs a little bit more timing to begin with. There's also a boost control compensation for ethanol content. A lot of times you want to run more boost with more ethanol since the octane is higher. And this is just a fuel composition target correction. So this is a percentage of your boost targets, which your boost targets are here. And this is going to, based on ethanol content, it's going to add a percentage of boost to those targets. So as your ethanol increases, you can add more boost with this table here, and increase your boost that way.
Take 18. Let's go over this again, Jason.
All right, so this is the stock ECU stuff for Subaru 16-bit cars, which are pretty much any turbo drive-by cable car. This is on the Carberry ROM, and it's a pretty fresh new flex fuel system that I'd come up with, and I've been refining it for a little while now. We've had it hasn't been to a public release yet, but we've had some guys testing it and had pretty good results with it. We've tuned a couple cars here at the shop now with it, and it's been working great for us. Basically, with this system, you've got our main table is here, our ethanol content global fuel compensation, and what it does is you've got ethanol content percentage across the top here, and based on that percentage, it will add a certain amount of fuel to your base fueling, which would be your pump gas fueling. So say at 85% ethanol, it's going to add 30%, and that will make up for the extra amount of fuel that the ethanol needs to maintain the correct fuel trims and AFRs under boost. The nice thing about this table is that it's pretty dynamic. You can adjust the content or the compensation percentage over different map input or values, so manifold pressure values. So that really allows you to fine-tune how much fuel you add at a certain content, as well as that same content over a range of manifold pressures, so cruising or idle or higher boost. Along with that, the system works off of a blending system. So basically, with unlike the standalones that generally have just one set of maps that you tune, and then you add fuel based on ethanol content, and you add timing based on ethanol content. just globally or with a small table. This actually allows you to have an entire pump gas tune and an entire E85 tune or E whatever percentage tune you want, and it will blend between the two. So with these curves here, the blend curve, we actually have 3 blend curves that we can use, so you can blend different tables at different rates. So for instance, ignition timing, if we had our base timing here, this would be our pump gas ignition timing table, and this would be our ethanol ignition timing table. And based on this table here, I can set the ignition timing to blend based on off of flex blend curve 1, and that's this table here. It will blend a certain amount of the second table in. So at say 85% ethanol, we want all of our second table, which is our entire E85 tune. And down at 0% ethanol, just pump gas, we want all of our pump gas table here. And in between, you can blend it linearly or you can bring it in at a faster rate, but it really allows you to completely adjust your ignition timing over different blend levels based on how you would like, how it to blend in, and it gives you a lot of dynamic control to the system. The nice thing is that you have 3 different blend curves. So you say, for instance, if you wanted to blend boost at a different rate, you've got your target boost tables, and you've got your ethanol target boost, and you've got your pump gas target boost, and there's a determination table for that as well. And you can set it to say flex blend curve 2, and it'll actually use another flex curve, and you can blend that at a different rate than the ignition timing. So you can ramp your ignition timing in differently than your boost based on ethanol content and your fueling. There's also a blend table for your speed density fueling. So on top of this adding fuel, you can change your speed density VE table based on ethanol content. And overall, it just adds a really dynamic, controllable system that you have just a very good amount of control over your ignition timing, boost, fueling, all your cranking enrichments, your startup, your warm-up enrichments. Everything is just able to be blended and controlled based on different ethanol content. So it works really well. And you can kind of see compared to the Haltech, you've just got an infinite amount more control over it.